Hello everybody, welcome back. So in the previous recording, I introduced you to Boolean variables. So basically, Python, as well as any programming language, can tell if something is true or false. So you test whether a number is larger than another number or equal, or there are various tests you do, and depending on the result of the test, you can tell whether it is true or false. Only two conditions, two states, true or false, nothing in between, true or false. And by having that true or false, we can make decisions and we can make the program do certain things. In this recording, I'm going to introduce you to the if statement. So if something is true, then I'm going to do this. Or else I'll do something else. That is, if it's false, if it doesn't pass the test, I will do something else. So the kinds of tests that the if statement does, I'm going to write it down in this new Jupyter notebook. I already created it for you to save you some time. I'm calling it CEIS110 Lesson 2.1 because we're going to stay in Lesson 2. This is Module 2 of your course. And it's the if statement. I already changed the name to that name. And I put a little header here, which is Markdown. I'm going to run that so you can see what it says. You know, pretty nice and simple. In the next one, I'm going to put another Markdown with a little bit more information for you. And it is on the if statement. So I'm going to copy from another file that I have here just to save you some time. So the if statement is, we're going to use it to create a decision structure. All right. All of this looks gibberish. It's sort of like HTML. So when I run it, it shows something very nice and pretty like that. We can talk about Markdown code and how to document in another conversation. I have specific files to cover that. Right now, just focus on the if statement. Let's capitalize it here. It's just for looks. Okay. So you can test when something is greater than something else, when it's less than or smaller than something else, when it's greater than or equal than something else, when it's smaller than or equal, or when it is not equal. You can do all those tests. All right. So let's think of an example, right? Let's say that there is a lake and that there is a levee, and you're checking on the water level, and there is a gate somewhere in this environment. Let's pretend you have that type of a dam, type of a levee, type of a lake, and you're checking the measuring of the water. You have a way to capture that data, and the data are going to tell you whether you go above or beyond a certain threshold. Okay? If it goes above and beyond the threshold, you will decide what to do with the gates. You have gates to open the water and let the water flow so that it doesn't spill at the wrong places. All right, so let's do that. Let's say that the water level is say it's 1,000 feet or whatever. It's just a number. I just want to do this for an example. And let's say that our threshold, and just are variables that I'm coming up with. I'm going to call it W. I could call it water. I'm just going to call it W for simplicity. And then the threshold will be, say, 1,200. All right. So I'm going to run that, and nothing seems to happen. But now we know, since we've been learning this, we know that those variables have captured that value. And these are integers. They're just full numbers, right? So let's add another cell here, and I'm going to use the if statement for the first time. So here I'm going to put a comment within my code, and I'm going to call it the if statement. As an example. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to say, okay, if, let me give you 2 lines so it's more clear to see. Sometimes, well, let's leave it 1 line. 1 line below my statement. So if I say if, what am I going to test? If the water is larger than the threshold, I'm going to do something. So when I make an if statement, I start with the if, then the test that I'm going to do. I could put it within parentheses, make it look pretty like that, but I'm going to leave it like this, nice and simple. And then when I'm done with the statement and the if statement, I could actually continue typing on the same line, but I'm going to show you that more static way of making it look better when you read it. I put a colon. After my if statement, there is a test, and then after the colon, I'm going to enter a command that will be executing, that will execute if that statement is true. If the statement is false, it's not going to execute it. So I'm going to say if the water is larger than the threshold, I'm going to print open the gates. All right, so I'm going to do that. So let's take a look. The water is 1,000. The threshold is 1,200. Is this going to open the gates? Well, let's run it and see what happens. No, nothing happens. We didn't get a signal to open the gates. So let's get to another line. And this time, let's say that the water level is 1,400 and the threshold 1,200, right? Then immediately, I'm just going to go ahead and enter my if statement. I'm not going to put a comment here. You can see what I'm doing, and I'm verbally describing it. So I'm going to change the value of water. The value of the threshold stays the same, but we got more water. It's rained or something. And now the levee is going to spill over. You know, maybe this is a disaster, but you have some buffer. Maybe you have some warning and it allows you to have this buffer. So anyway, you went over your threshold. I'm going to run it. And this time when it ran, it went ahead and found that this was true. Therefore, it ran this command, open the gates. Open the gates. All right. So that is your first if statement or set of statements. And it's a very simple one. It's just checking if it's true, then do this. If it is false, well, in this case, it's not going to do the statement that is below. Why do we put a colon in here, and why did I indent here? Okay. If I didn't put a colon, it will not know that I'm done making my test. And if I did not indent it, in this case, it may not seem to make too much sense to you. But what about if we add a few more lines of code underneath the truth, the option what is true? When that is the case, then we need to tell Python how many lines of code belong to the condition true. So let's do that in another line. I'm going to say, I'm going to leave the same values of the water and copy this, the water and the threshold. And I'm going to say, hey, is the water above threshold? I'm going to say, I'm going to add a few more. I'm going to hit enter after the colon, and I'm going to add a few more lines of code. And I'm going to put warning, right? And then after I say warning, I add another line which is already there, and it's going to say open the gates. Warning, open the gates. So there are two things that are going to happen after my if statement is true. If I don't indent, then Python is not going to know that I need to run those pieces of command when the statement is true. Okay? In other languages, you have other ways to handle that. When something is true, they put squirrely brackets between multiple commands. Python doesn't require you to put squirrely brackets. Python actually is a little bit more easy, or it's easier than other languages with respect to how much you type. It's more economic in terms of typing because it doesn't require you to put curly brackets between commands. It just knows that if it is indented, then it belongs to the previous if statement. So I'm going to run this. You see, it ran both of them. It ran both of them, right? Now I'm going to add another line to prove my point. And this time I'm going to change the water. I'm just going to change the water right here. I'm going to make it like the first time around. I'm going to make my water be 1,000. 1,000, right? I'm going to make my water be 1,000. It's there. I'm going to add another line of code, and I'm going to hit the same. I'm going to do the same code, but this time I'm going to play dumb. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm going to forget to indent this, right? Here the water is below the threshold. I already ran that command. I can tell I ran it just by looking at the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It counts every time I ran a command. So there's my fifth command. Water is 1,000. Threshold still 1,200. Well, is my water larger than the threshold? The answer is no. We know it's not. So I should not open the gates. But I didn't indent this. So it's going to run. I can tell you that's going to happen. But this one that is indented, this warning, is that going to be printed? Well, because W is smaller than T, this is going to be false. So it's going to fail this test. Therefore, what you see in the indent is not going to run. But this will run because I forgot to indent it. So I'm going to run that. And yes, it did exactly what I was saying, what I expected it to do. It tested W and T. In this case, water is 1,000, threshold is 1,200. Water is not higher than threshold, it's not bigger than threshold, it's not larger than threshold. So it fails. Therefore, it's not going to do what is in here. But because I did not indent it, it's still printed open the gates. But I don't want to open the gates because the water is below the threshold. I should not be doing that. That is a mistake. So the proper way of doing it would have been just like I did here. I will have to indent both any of the commands that belong to the if statement when the if statement is true. So in this case, we know the if statement is false. So if it's false, there's no warning. If it's false, there is no opening of the gates. So let's run it. We know that water is 1,000, threshold is 1,200. Water is not larger than threshold. Water is less than threshold. So let's run this. So here, nothing happened. You see it's number 7 because I just ran it. Nothing happened. And it didn't happen because it's false and none of this ran. Here it ran because mistakenly I forgot to, or I pretended I forgot, I did it on purpose, did not indent. So indentation is very important. Now let's do one more type of if statement. Let's go with the let's put an if. Let's put a little mark down here. Then if then else. If else statement. And what it is now you have choice 1 true and choice 2 false. That's what you have now. So that's part of my little markdown. So let's do this. So let's see. Let's go and stay with the same idea. So copy and paste. But this time, right here, I'm going to do an else. I'm worrying if the water exceeded the threshold, so I'm going to do an else. I'm going to say print all is good. Okay, and I'm going to say print keep the gates closed. Okay, so we know that the water is 1,000 because I executed it over here, and the threshold is 1,200. Therefore, this should be false. So it's going to execute the false part, which is choice 2, this one at the bottom, of my statements. So let's run it. And this says, all is good, keep the gates closed. What if I add another statement? But this time, I'm going to change my water level. And I'm going to say now it's 1400. And I ran it, and I'm going to add this if then else statement again. But this time the water is above threshold. So I'm going to paste it, and I run it. Then it says, warning, open the gates. So that's your if else statement, where you have two paths, and then the program will continue running as it goes. So that's your introduction to the if statement. There's a little bit more to it. You actually can chain the number of else. You can call them else if, elif. I actually call it elif, 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 when you continue testing. But for now, for an introduction, I'm going to leave it at this. And one thing I'd like to add is I'm going to add some references for you. And the reference that I'm going to include is this, I have it open right here. It's this Python tutorial out of python.org. And you can see, I'm going to be using this reference quite a bit in this course, but I shared it before, I think in the first lesson. But I want to share it again. You go there, there is an actual tutorial. What I may have shared before is just the main page, but here is a tutorial. So you go to that tutorial, and it's right here. So you can explore on your own. And here I was just looking at the if statement for you. So if I go there, they explain more about the if statement. They do it from a prompts perspective. So here is something, and then there is the if, then else. It's an elif, you keep on asking questions. Elif, else if, and then finally an else. So I suggest and I recommend it. You come in here and read this. You can also find information on Geeks for Geeks or Stack Overflow. If you go to Geeks for Geeks and do a search for Geeks on if statements, they'll have other ways to explain it. My way of explaining it is this one. I try to be simple. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this file, and you will have a copy because I'm keeping everything on my GitHub. And so there it is. You're going to see a 2.1, and I'll share this recording, and I'll let you come and see and play with this code. You can the link that I'm going to be sharing with you, this link right here, you can access it, and you can download these files or copy and paste on your own, so you can learn on your own, and you can play with more if statements. You can create your own ideas. Also, the textbook, which is a live textbook that goes with your class, will show you many other ideas. My objective here was to give you an introduction, to explain it my way in a nice and easy step-by-step from the ground up, to prepare you. Now you are on your own, in the sense that you are empowered to learn on your own. That's what I mean. And you can go and find out more about the if statement on the Geeks for Geeks and so forth. Okay? So I'll let you go, and I'll talk to you later. Let's put this here as I close. Take care. Bye-bye.